Hi everybody, Russ from the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well this early Sunday morning. So hopefully a few people with their bacon sandwiches and cups of tea watching this. We've got another X-Hammers, My Hammers 11. We're early because George's in Australia. George Cow all the way in Australia. How are we, George?
Hi, Russ. Very well, thank you. All
How is it over there at the moment? Because obviously there's all the going back into lockdown and things like that at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah, well, the country was very slow with their vaccine rollout. I think they thought they were so protected in this island and away from everyone.
Yeah.
But they were a bit slack in their vaccine rollout, and they're really trying to play catch up now. And it's sort of that Delta strain sort of getting out there, and there's lockdowns all over the place at the moment. We're okay in Queensland at the moment. I live in Queensland, an hour north of Brisbane, and we're okay at the moment. But yeah, there's Victoria, Sydney, and Melbourne's having a bit of a struggle at the moment. But
yeah,
anyway, I'll have to get there soon as everyone else and get over this horrible pandemic. It's been a nightmare for a lot of people.
Yeah, it has been. It really, really has been. But I mean, yeah, I was reading today. We're doing swapsies. It's like in terms of vaccine swapsies, isn't it? So it's like we give you ours, and then you give ours later. Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy where we are at the moment. But but we keep, we'll fit the family well, George. I hope.
Yeah, I've got a daughter and some grandchildren back in Scotland. They're actually going to be emigrating out here early next year. So,
oh wow,
my other daughter lives here with us. So now we're good.
Brilliant.
Very lucky, and says what's going on with a lot of people around the world. I think we've got a lot to count our blessings and be thankful. I think.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, exactly. As long as you got your health, that's the main thing at the moment, isn't it? It seems to be perfectly honest.
Money can't buy your health. It's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Family and friends and health. And if you've got that, and you're a rich person, I reckon,
Well, there we go. Exactly. You can't take it with you. You're totally right, man. And do you keep an eye on how the Hammers are doing at the moment?
Yeah, I've always, since I'm not just saying this, but since I've left, it's the first score I've always looked for,
really?
After I left the club. And the same with the clubs I play with in Scotland. You're always looking West Ham, Hearts, Dunfermline. You want the clubs to be doing well, and fantastic. Davy Moyes has done a fantastic job. You can't take it away from what he's done. He's come in and kept them up a year ago, and he's come back again and done what he's done just now. So yeah. I just hope he keeps getting the full support. Obviously, the supporters will be buzzing, and we hopefully confidence is an amazing thing once it goes through a team, and I'm really looking forward to keep a close eye. We're being the other end of the world. We've got fantastic coverage of the English Premier League, on Foxtel and Optus, and we get all the games. We see more English football here now than I did when I was. It's amazing, And I've been getting back in the last 10 years. I've been getting over there a fair bit, and I've seen a lot of West Ham games, and because I do a coaching program linked with the club over in Australia and New Zealand and what have you, and we take groups over there. So I've seen a lot of West Ham games in the last 10 years. It's been absolutely fantastic catching up with a few old faces and getting. When we first started going over, we was still Upton Park, and then during the process of going to London Stadium, I've seen it all happen, type of thing,
Yeah, I suppose you have really. Yeah, you sort of seen the transition in the team, and yeah, I mean, as you said, you do the thing with West Ham, and so what is that exactly? Is it sort of I know you bring some. Is it players?
It's a private business, but it's linked in a genuine partnership with the West Ham Foundation. So we bring the coach, Tony Carr, before he departed the club. Tony was out a couple of times overseeing the big national camp that we do once a year, and Paul Heffer's been with us. Paul must have been here 4 or 5 times overseeing the national camp. We've had quite a number of the academy coaches come out, Lytton and Dell, Trevor Lewin, the academy secretary's been out. We've had quite a number of Jimmy Hampshire's been with us. So we've had a lot of the different coaches out over the period, and just sort of bringing quality academy coaches to local areas all over Australia, and letting them get a little taste of it. Obviously, it'd be nice to see a top class young player and maybe get one. But the main thing I could just say to them, when I'm asked about the program, it's an opportunity to get first class coaching, and then so we do 2-day regional camps leading to a national camp for the players that get invited to the national camp, and from the national camp we'll run a couple of trips to the UK, and where they get a chance to watch Premier League games, play games against the top clubs, mainly West Ham. It's the focus of the programme, but we are linked into other clubs as well. It'd be unrealistic. West Ham, a club the size of West Ham, they're very busy. You couldn't be bothering them for 14 days. But if you get a couple of days training and maybe a game against them, and you do a stadium tour, a London Stadium, and then take them to a Premier League game, and then we do a similar thing with other clubs in England and Scotland. So it's a fantastic experience for the young players. And, as I said, they're getting a little taste of what the inside of football's like.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've really quite a few, because there was a period in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s where we had quite a lot of Australian players, like Stan Lazaridis and Steve Moten and Richie Garcia and players.
Another one. I had Hayden coaching.
Hayden as well. Yeah,
one to Hayden Fox is a good. Yeah, a lot of good Aussies has been at the club for sure.
Yeah, and he was saying, I think we mean Steve. I think it was. It might have been Richie actually, because Richie obviously came over as a youth team player, and obviously from Australia. Now he's in England, and it's totally different. Whereas with what you're doing, at least it gives them, as you said, an idea before. Hopefully, they come over full hog. You know what I mean?
Try and be realistic with them. Every young boy's dreams to be a professional football player.
Course, yeah.
That was my dreams and nothing's changed. It's just that it's bigger and better. It's bigger than ever today, and they've all got these dreams. And we try and be very realistic with them and say, look, this is it's a football experience. Make the most of it. Soak it up. Enjoy the games. Enjoy listening to everybody, the coaching that they're getting, and just enjoy the journey. If it leads to what it definitely does is they've a couple of weeks that they spend with their mum and dads, and they often normally come on the trips as well. The older ones sometimes come on their own.
Yeah.
But they get a couple of great weeks with players that they'll never ever forget. Full of photos, whether they ever do anything in football or not. They still have someone that they'll treasure for the rest of their lives. And what I would say, definitely, there's been quite a few of. I would say opens their eyes up to the standard involved in the UK, and let's say I don't think you have to tell them. I think young players are very smart. Young people are very smart, and they can work it out for themselves once they play against the teams in the UK. They get an idea themselves if they're kidding themselves on, or if they've got a chance of doing something. I certainly think my experience of the trips is when they get back to Australia, they're certainly. 2 weeks doesn't make you a better player just like that. It takes a long time to make a football player, but I think it inspires them to come back and work even harder at their game, like their local clubs, to try and get to as high a level as they possibly can, whatever that may be.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's a fantastic program, absolutely brilliant program. And obviously, and going back to your time at West Ham, I mean, although Scotland is down to England. It's a bit of a shorter commute than Australia to England. So, for those of you, and if anyone has any questions actually who's watching, please put them in. We'll try and get through as many as we can when we're talking to George. But people like to hear about the good old days, George, to be honest. And so, going back to the beginning of your West Ham journey. So if I'm right in thinking, was it 1977 you signed apprentice forms? Was that right?
I did. They came down for a trial in 1976, and I signed as an apprentice in 1977. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it always going to be West Ham, or was anyone else sniffing around?
It was so lucky. It was so lucky. I think fate in life, sometimes things are fated for you, and it's meant to be. I came from the north of Scotland, a little fishing village, and no one had ever been it was impossible to become a professional football player. Seriously, it was. It was never. It was just almost impossible. And I was a fanatical Aberdeen supporter, and that's for. Anyway, I had a trial with them when I was 14, and the manager resigned on the Monday that I turned up, so there was no. The coaching staff didn't know for their job, so really it wasn't. And they said they said it did. The ones that were there said we did well. We'd like to invite you back when a new manager comes. A new manager came in, so that guy called Ali McLeod. I don't remember him. He took Scotland to the World Cup in Argentina in '78. And he didn't look at players from north of Scotland. He brought all the players up from the Central Belt, Glasgow and Edinburgh and what have you. And anyway, the following week, about 2-3 weeks later, I had a trial for the Scottish under-15. The schoolboy game. It used to be played at Wembley and in Hampden. It was always on the telly. The week after the home internationals, it was. And I missed out again, and I thought that was the end of the road for football. My dreams, I wasn't good enough, and I didn't. That was kind of. And all of a sudden, the local school teacher coming and seeing me, he had got a letter from one of the selectors saying that he thought it was a bit unjust. It was all Celtic and Rangers S forms and not this kid from the north of Scotland. And he felt I was a bit unlucky. And he come over to my mum and dad's house and sat me down and showed me 3 letters, one from Arsenal and one from Tottenham. And both of them said, be very interested. We'll send a scout to have a look at me. And West Ham said they wanted me down straight away next holidays. So it was, and then after I'd been to West Ham, there was lots of Scottish clubs interested, but it was a, you couldn't, I don't know what the rules are today, but Scottish schoolboys couldn't sign a schoolboy form for an English club at those time. And it was actually Ron Greenwood was still manager, and John Lyle they worked together as a John was team manager, and Ron was a general manager. And basically, I was down for 2 weeks in the pre-season. I come back in October, and they promised me in October. Then they said, "Look, there's a contract here. We want to sign you," and it was a verbal agreement. They kept their word, and I kept my word, and I was at West Ham. We didn't come down at Christmas. I came down at Easter, and I went to Germany on a youth tour with them, and then I joined the club as a full-time player in the start of the following season. So it was word of mouth, genuine people. My mum and dad had come down, and at the time I signed, and John Lyle and Ron Greenwood spent time with my parents, and I had great digs. A lad called Roger Cross that became the chief scout at West Ham.
Yeah, no, Roger, yeah.
Great friend of Harry Redknapp and Frank Lampard. He worked with Harry and Frank and coaching staff when they were at the club. Last stayed with Roger's mum and dad for quite a number of years when I first went down. So I was in a good football environment with really decent people, and I was very fortunate. It was meant to be, I think. It was meant to be.
Yeah. It's so funny when you listen to people talk, because obviously it seems, obviously we've spoken to a lot of players that, that have said were signed around the time that you played as well, and you were signed. And it seems just like West Ham were really on it in terms of how as you said, John and Ron would be talk to your parents and stuff, where Tottenham and Spurs like, yeah, we're interested, particularly with the Scottish connection. Obviously, we signed a lot of Scottish players around John and Ron's time. Straight in there, West Ham. We like you. Cowie.
At the time with Ronnie Boyce, Boyce was fantastic as well. Mick McGivern, Ronnie Boyce, Tony Carr was the under-16s coach, and it was Billy Lansdowne was in charge of the reserves at the time. So it was a nice environment. I was like a duck to water, to be honest with you, coming down to London I remember when I first came down, I insisted at 15 years old, my parents wanted to come down with me, and I insisted on going down myself. I was very independent, even as a young player. I've always been strong-minded. And anyway, I went down in the train. I was panicked. I was nervous as hell, but I wanted to go on my own anyway. They said they would have somebody at the King's Cross station to meet me. Anyway, there's this guy, long hair, he had a jeans jacket on and a pair of jeans, and I'm dressed up with a fancy collar and tie and beige platform shoes. And this person takes the piss out of me to this day. He'll never forget that. I was so, when he was meeting me off the train, it was obvious who it was. This guy was all dressed up. I thought, coming to London, you got to get in. This was we thought it was. I thought it was top class fashion. We're probably about 5 years behind the times, behind London scene, and from the north of Scotland. It was Alvin Martin that met me, and Alvin took me back to his digs. And Alvin was about 18 at the time, and he chaperoned me and looked after me for my first 2 weeks in London on my first trial down there. Ended up staying with Alvin in digs at Roger's mum and dad's place. Well, Raymond Stewart, Alvin, and myself all shared the same digs at one time. So I was in good company for sure.
Yeah, good company.
People.
And at least with you and Ray, at least you could work as each other's translator. Ray's got.
We could. Ray and I could understand each other. Yeah. A few more later on. We got Tom McAllister came in, and then Sandy Clark came down from Scotland, and Neil Orr, of course, as well. And I'm still in touch with Ray, and when I do the trips back over, we often catch up with Ray. And Neil has been in Australia for a long time. And
yes, he's back in Scotland, though, isn't he?
Neil's a very good friend of mine, and we keep in touch. So it's nice. It's really good.
It's lovely. And it just seems around that period that all those players, whether it was sort of the 80s period, like the early 80s, like you were involved in, or maybe later on, maybe the 86 crowd, you all seem to still be in contact with one another. Do you know what I mean? It just shows how much you must have enjoyed your time and the closeness of the squad, because you still were chatting to people, you know, years on.
It's something at the time. I think I certainly took it for granted, and it's just the way it was, you know. And
Sure,
as you get older and more experienced in life and in football and that, you realise how close to that boys were. And any time I met Parksy I met Phil Parks at the old state at Upton Park a few years ago, and as soon as he seen me, you know, he's given me a huge hug. And so I met Paul Brush another time. It was a game against Tottenham there, and Paul, I don't know if he's still at Tottenham, but he was working as a coach at Tottenham at the time. And I had a good chat with Brushy. And everyone, when you haven't seen them for like years, like 20 years, and it's as if it's like yesterday. They're absolutely fantastic. They really are. Patsy Holland, you know, Patsy was really good to me as a young lad, and there's times that he's come and done coaching sessions on my tours and stuff like that. You know, so any of them. I met David Cross a couple of times. He come and see me up in Manchester and in the Bolton Hotel. David has come and spent twice. He's come and visit. You know, caught up with me. It's like yesterday when you start chatting and you sit down and have a laugh. It's the same. We remember the same stupid jokes and the funny stories, and there's some characters. There really was. And he was one as well. David Cross. He was some character. What a fantastic guy. But we really the team that I've picked in year 11, and there's other players I've said that I played with. I could have picked 3 teams probably of quality, you know, on the ones that the names I've got down here. And like I said, I'm going name dropping here at the top, but we Trevor and Billy Bonds and Trevor Brook, and not only were they, I mean, they're club icons. I mean, the stands are named after them. They're icons. And Bobby Moore, Trevor Brook, and Billy Bonds is probably your 3. Peters and Hurst as well, but these 3 absolutely, they are West Ham United, and all I can say about them, they're so. They treat you so well. I was just a young lad from Scotland. They treat you as if you were one of them right from the start. You know, and absolutely humble, and it always gave me a great. I mean, I think I come from a very humble background anyway, a fishing family for the north of Scotland, and I think I knew what was brought and what was right and wrong in life and what have you. But when you see these guys were superstars, and when I was in a Monster, I didn't really realise I was just part of it, and you definitely took it for granted. But looking back now, when you've sort of travelled the world a fair bit, you know, you realise how big these guys were. But every one of them were really decent people. You know, I think that's the most important thing for me was, I mean, Trevor Brook and Billy Bonds and Pat Holland. You go through Davy Cross, Alan Devonshire. They're really nice people, and I think that's the most important thing.
I think that's the mark of as you said, of the men, where it's like, you know, they were, you know, said Trevor Brook in, Billy Bonds, you know, these icons, and you know, it wasn't like, you know, even when you was in and around them, you didn't take it for granted, but you know, it was just like they're just one of the lads. Do you know what I mean? And then afterwards,
it was their fault you took it for granted, because they made you feel, you know, you were one of them right from
exactly.
Day one. So I'll credit them.
Yeah,
well, Pat Holland used to. I remember I was just a young lad, and he says, George, he used to call me a jockney, not a cockney. He says, he used to call me a jockney. He reckons I was too nice to be a Scotsman. He says, "You're a jockney." That's what he used to say to me, Pat.
I love it. And it must. I suppose it must have been, as you said, you know, coming down from a young age. It must have been a little bit of a, as you said, sort of deer in the headlights, so to speak. Because obviously you're small. I mean, we've got Anton here. Anton is a big West Ham fan, but he is up in Scotland, and he said, you sort of answered the question anyway. But leaving the family home, young lad, going to the big city, the big smoke. But as you said, you had a great team around you. Great bunch of lads.
Great question, Anton. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. But I dreamed of becoming a football player, and to get the chance to come down to West Ham, I think it's only got to. I remember when I came down on trial, spent that first 2 weeks with Alvin. I was really homesick. I was only 15, and London, living in East London compared to this little fishing village in the north of Scotland. It was, and after about a week, I was struggling. I was even on my first trial. I remember feeling sorry for myself, and Alvin had a word with me. He says, "Look, he's up yourself." He says, "We've all gone through this." So Alvin would come down from Liverpool, obviously. He's from, and he said, "Look, you go home now. That's the end of it." And basically, that's what I had to take stock. And once you got to training the next day, you got into a training session, and you got over that hurdle. But maybe if it wasn't for Alvin Martin, with a few words in my ear saying that they've all been through that, and it's perfectly normal. But I think the secret was having good digs with Roger Cross's parents, and having been involved at a good club, because West Ham, they are a good club, and they've always been a good club, and they always will be a good club, and there are a lot of good people, as I said, the coaching staff and the players. So it was very hard, but worth it for sure.
Totally. And obviously, Scotland and England very close to each other. So obviously, when you had the sort of the three options, so to speak, Arsenal, the other team we don't talk about, and West Ham, obviously around that time, obviously you knew about what West Ham meant. Obviously it was a few years on from the World Cup and stuff. And
growing up, and I think most Scottish boys were the same. You always had a Scottish team that you supported, but you always had an English team. You knew more about English football than you did the Scottish football, because English football was there. That's where people wanted to be. And me growing up, I knew about all the English clubs for sure, and all the players were all household names to me. That's for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously, we sort of spoke before, George. I think it was 9 first team appearances, over that time. But those 9. But looking at some of the teams you played against, I think your first game was away to Ipswich, who were a big club in this. That's a real baptism of fire, wasn't it? Really.
Ipswich had a great side at the time. Butcher and Murin, Tyson, John Wark, Brian Talbot, Mariner, Gates, Ipswich. I think they were second in the league that year. And I was on the bench. I think I got on after about 10-15 minutes. I think I can't remember who got injured, but that was a hard debut away at Ipswich. The games I played were. I'm proud of the games I played. I don't think you get easy games of any kind, but they were hard games. It was one was a League Cup quarter final up at Anfield against Liverpool. Playing that, to me, Dalglish and these guys were a hero of mine, obviously. Being from Scotland, and that Liverpool team certainly was a fantastic side. So you don't have much time to think about it or be nervous. You're named in the team, and you're out in the field and sink or swim, basically. And I played against Man United at Upton Park.
Yep.
And on the Saturday, and then on the Monday night, I played against Tottenham, Ardiles, Villa, Perryman, Glenn Hoddle. Wow. They were great. It was an honour and a great experience to have been on the field with those players. For sure.
Yeah, totally. No, it's just I mean, as I said, whether it's one appearance or 799, the fact is, George, you've done something which millions of people around the world would have liked to have done. So play for the Claret and Blue. You said you played at Upton Park. You played in, you played against Arsenal's and Man United's and Liverpool's and Tottenham's. You basically got sort of all the. If you could pick the people that you wanted to play against as a player,
the Arsenal team at that time with Stapleton and O'Leary and Brady at Highbury. So. And I was subbing the Charity Shield. One of this, it was 5 subs actually, but I was one of the subs in the Charity Shield against Liverpool in 1980, which was 100,000 people at Wembley. I mean, I'm a little young lad from a village of 1,200 people and 1 pub and 6 churches in a little fishing village in north of Scotland. So it was an amazing experience, and and looking back, as I said, I loved it at the time. I enjoyed every minute, but it's only as you've got older that you realise. And I think I was ambitious as like everyone else, and I wanted to play first team football. And having had a taste of those games and sort of done okay in the games, and you felt you just wanted to reserve team football. I couldn't understand when I first started playing reserve team football. Reserve team football was exciting for me when I was a young boy. When I first got in the reserves, there were some big name players, and you're playing at Upton Park. And it was a buzz. But once you'd played in the first team, reserve team football was no good. It's absolutely flat. And you wanted that crowds, and you wanted to be out there, and you want to be part of the thing. That it's about playing in the first team, and that's what it is about. And once you'd tasted that, the only regret of West Ham, I would say, I could look back and say if I'd ever got any regrets, was I'd been there 6 years. I'd been. So in the first team squad, in the first team photo, only maybe 20 players in the first team squad at that time. And I'd been maybe 4 years in the first team photos and training with the first team most of the time. One regret, I would say, when John Lennon had the chance to leave and Rangers showed a bit of interest, and I went up to Glasgow for a week and spent a week training with Glasgow Rangers. John Lennon said to me then that there was a contract for me, and he explained about Trevor. He says Trevor was 23 before he played before that time, obviously, but before he was absolutely established and a wee bit more wisdom and maybe an older brother in football and a dad that knew about football. I'm not blaming anyone else; it's my decision. But
yes, I know.
One did say there was another year's contract, and he says maybe I should just if we give it another year. But I was just too impatient, and it was having played in those big games that was made me want to get out in front of the crowd and play. So that's the only. I have no regrets about going to West Ham. No regrets about anything at West Ham, other than you don't get a crystal ball and you don't get a second chance. You make a decision, and I had 4 very happy years at Hearts Midlothian.
Did you? Yeah.
We had a lot of success up there. We lost the league championship on goal difference to Celtic in 1986, and we won the Scottish Cup final the same year. So I played about 100 games in the first team for Hearts, and it was Hearts they're not as big as West Ham, but they're a big Scottish club. Crowd wise and support wise, Hearts are a decent club, and Edinburgh's a great place to stay and what have you. So, I went to a good place and had a really good time at Hearts Midlothian. I often just wonder maybe, but anyway, you don't get a second chance. You don't get a crystal ball.
No, exactly. It's funny actually. We've interviewed a lot of youth team players who may at West Ham who didn't necessarily break into the first team, or they may have done once or twice. But as you said, once you got the taste of first team football, that's what it was. And they may have dropped to division and ended up playing 200 games for Scunthorpe or 180 games for Swansea.
Yeah.
But it's being around the first team, and that's the real thing. It's the buzz around the first team on a Saturday.
Anyone that spent any time at West Ham, you got an education in football. And I think I've done a fair bit in the coaching. I've had a career in coaching. I'm not a career, not in maybe the English Premier League or the Scottish Premier League, but I've sort of been around the world a bit, and I've had a career in coaching, and I think being at West Ham for 6 years gives you. They do preach and play. We've always played good football. We've all tried to pass the ball, control, pass, move, and go back to Ron Greenwood's days, and some of those things are the same today and will never ever change. And I think it just gives you a good basic understanding of the game.
Crazy, yeah. And also, I mean, you mentioned that quick. You mentioned sort of after going to coaching and stuff, and obviously, one of the standouts being the national coach of the Solomon Islands. How did that happen?
Yeah, I guess that a fair bit. And there was some hard times when I was in the Somme, because there was a civil war erupted at the time. I was there in 2020 when the militants took over the plate. I was there through the whole young lads in the streets with machine guns. It was it was crazy times. But the Solomon's a beautiful place. Right, the best scuba diving in the world, and it was a British colony for a long time, and some beautiful islands. And it sounds like an ideal job, and it was interesting. It was a great job. I was flying all over the Pacific because I looked after all the teams from under 17. 17s, under 20s, 23s. 23s was the Olympic, trying to get the Olympics in the senior national team. So I had to look after my basic job was picking a squad, train them as best I can, travel to a country and play in a tournament at all these different age groups. So I spent 3.5 years of my life flying across the South Pacific and Tahiti and Fiji and Vanuatu, Samoa, New Zealand, and Australia, obviously, as part of Oceania Football Confederation. So that was something that came out of the blue, and something you could never have planned for, but it just happened. And I was working as a regional coaching director in Queensland, and I was at a coaching camp with some of the state's best players. And there was a German coach called Les Schleinflug. He was the assistant national coach to Eddie Thompson. Eddie Thompson was a Scottish guy that played for Aberdeen. He played for Hearts, my old club. Yeah. And so there was a bit of and Eddie died actually at the age of 55 with cancer, unfortunately. I met Eddie a couple of times when I first came to Australia, and Les knew that Eddie and I sort of knew each other, and so it's a bit of who you know, basically. But he pulled me aside basically at a coaching camp, and and he said, would I be interested in going to a national coach of Pacific Island country, the Cook Islands or the Solomon Islands? And he says because he'd been in the region so long, and he was one of the well-known, experienced coaches. They always asked his advice of who they should go for, and he says he was getting pestered by every Tom, Dick, and Harry trying to get these jobs, and for some reason he took a liking to myself, and he says, if you want one of these jobs, I can get you the job. So
fantastic experience, amazing experience, isn't it? Just to be doing that, as you said, it. Martin says it looks. I think it's a dream. It sounds like the dream job. Well, I think I'm the Civil War, but
it was a dream job, and I thought I was going to dream job as well. But after I was only there I went on my first trip to Fiji, the Melanesian Cup. Sorry, there's so many stories. I'll keep you here all night. By the way, there's so many different stories.
Well, it's only the morning. It's night where you are.
West Ham team, not. But no, it was an amazing experience, and I was working at all different levels. Tournaments all over the Pacific. It was quite amazing. But as I said, there was a civil war broke out when I was there, and I had to send my family back to Brisbane. I was actually evacuated out of the Solomons on a New Zealand Hercules aeroplane at one time because of the troubles that had erupted. But I stuck out for 3 years, and it was a lot of nice times with them, and we did quite well in a few of the tournaments, and I think we hope improve things. We had a lot of good times, a lot of fun, and hopefully we improved football a little bit in the time I was there. I think we did anyway. Hopefully we did.
Amazing. Right, we're gonna talk about your Hammers 11 in a minute, but I've had a question, right? And so you're in Australia, I'm in Essex, Peach is in Canada, so it's, I don't know, God knows what early. Haggis or pie and mash? That's the question. That's the important question we want to
know. Pie and mash is. Remember, just next to I don't know if you remember. I don't know how well you know the bowling area, the bowling ground, just around the corner for the bowling ground. But when we in the early days, before we were at the Chadwell Heath, before we got lunches at Chadwell Heath at the training ground, we often used to go to a little cafe called Casatari's.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Around the coast, all the boys went for years. We used to get little vouchers for the club for boys who use their vouchers and go around. Casatari's was brilliant, by the way. I remember he steamed poor the boys, Phil Brignall, all these guys. We went there. That was an experience. And next door was a pie and mash shop. So I like a pie and mash, and I love Casatari's, and I also like haggis nowadays as well. I never tasted haggis growing up, even though I'm from the north of Scotland. I wouldn't touch this stuff. But
really,
when you go away from home, you get older and you acquire things. I beat a few burns. I think the first burn supper was in Australia, and then I was also in one. Believe it or not, I was in a burn supper in the Solomon Islands. We were whiskey and haggis there.
Nips and tatties. Oh, God.
I like them all.
Fair enough, Peach. Yeah, he's in Canada. Christ knows what it must be about.
That's amazing.
It's about 20 to 6 in the morning at the moment. That's what they do. That's what Peach does.
Real West Ham supporters.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, you must know it. Just they're all over the world. It's incredible.
It is. It's absolutely amazing. But fantastic. It really is.
Right. Let's talk about your 11 because you've. Right. I think it's a bloody good 11. I think. And right. Okay. So what we do is everyone we pick on everyone we have on the channel. I think the only ones who haven't given an 11. I think Harry didn't give an 11, but he started talking about Bobby Ferguson, and so he ran out of time. As you can imagine with Harry,
I was with Bobby Ferguson 6 months ago.
Oh, we've had Bobby on.
Bobby lives in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And he was up in Brisbane visiting his grandchildren, and he contacted me. So I don't see Bobby all the time, but I've seen him a couple of times.
Lovely man.
I seen him 6 months ago. He's looking great, by the way. He's looking super fit.
Oh, he's looking,
plays loads of golf. He's looking fantastic.
Yeah, we interviewed him a few months ago. Yeah, he was looking good. He was looking great. Right, okay. So, speaking of goalkeepers, then, right. It's not Bobby. You haven't picked Bobby in goal.
No, Bobby might not be pleased, but I'm sure Bobby will understand. I don't think.
I don't think he picked himself, to be honest.
I mean, Phil Parks. I mean, at the time at Parks, I think we played 550,000 from him. I think, if I remember, when John played at QPR. And I mean, it was at the same time as Shilton and Clemens, wasn't he? He was he was an outstanding goalkeeper. He was absolutely top class. He couldn't. I mean, I've written down the players I played with. I remember when I was, as well as the ones that there was Mervyn Day, Young Football Player of the Year. Bobby Ferguson's record goalkeeper signing from Scotland. I know you laugh at Scottish goalkeepers, but Fergie was a good goalkeeper. Tom McAllister, another Scottish goalkeeper we had at the club. They're the ones that I played with, but Phil Parkes was outstanding, and he had a fantastic signing for the club. And I think he still does the hospitality stuff now.
He's still around. Yeah, still around, Phil.
Great guy, great keeper.
Yeah. Top man. And I was about to say, probably, unusual to have a white goalkeeper's top in this picture.
Yeah,
you'd think it's not the best colour for a goalkeeper to have a white goalkeeper top.
Seen Phil Parkes was before I ever met him. It was on the TV adverts. I remember the Cossack hairspray. Cossack hairspray, and Parkes, he come out for a game with the fur coat and the big blonde hair and the Cossack hairspray. But no, Phil was a great keeper and a fantastic person for sure.
Yeah, lovely guy.
Definitely.
Right. Okay.
Easy start.
Easy start. Well, I mean, to be honest, okay, right. Let's go. Okay, so we put Parkes in. We'll go for another easy one. Let's go for right back, because we've been speaking about
Ray Stewart for me. I mean, I'm a bit biased because I lived in Digsby Ray for a year, but no, he was outstanding when the amount of games and the amount of penalty important goals he scored for the club, and he adapted very quickly when he came down from Dundee United. He loved the life in East London and very much bought into. I know Ray does a lot of things with the club still to this day. He's down at any of the functions and very close with that group of players. And it came down for, Ray was sort of one of the ones that might sort of in the way that when Ray, I picked Paul Allen, I'll talk about Paul later, but these were lads that I would sort of be competing against to try and get a place in the first team. Ray Stewart was outstanding, and the amount of important goals he got, he had a fantastic career. He loved the club, and everyone liked Ray. Just a good lad that would always try and help you with things if he could. As I say, some of the pressure penalty kicks that I remember him taking were. Remember one against Aston Villa in the FA Cup? I think it was a FA Cup quarter-final, remember?
And he was still a young lad, really, taking that one as well, to be fair.
He handled the pressure brilliantly. I think, that was quite a... I mean, good players as well. I've got other ones. Johnny McDowell I played with. With Keith Coleman, John McDowell, they're both right backs. Both very, very good players. But Raymond Stewart for me,
Yeah. And it's like, I think that's a lost art, the way Ray used to take penalties. And Julian Dix, sort of a few years later on, just putting the ball down and putting your laces through it. It's a lost art now.
He knew where he was hitting it, and he kept cool, and he hit it low and hard most of the time, wasn't it?
It just seems a lost art now. People trying to be too clever, but that's just my view of penalty taking. Right, so we'll put Ray in. Let's go. We've gone right back. Let's go left back then. Who's going to be left back then?
Frank Lampard for me. I mean, Frank could play right or left back, but if you're putting Ray at right back, and Frank's got to be in there.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how many games he played for the club, probably 700 or 800. One of these, the same category as your Billy Bonds and your Trevor Brookins. Frank was a great professional and a really top class player and a good person as well. Again, he always had a word in the young boys' ears. He used to pull me aside after training, just about every training session. George, got a minute? Half an hour extra, had me running at him, and he would tackle me hard. By the way, he didn't pull back even these, so he would always do that extra half hour, heading balls off the line. As I was his little guinea pig, helping him. But as I was helping him, I was getting great experience from a great player, and I was, he would work, and we would swap over, and I would get the extra training as well. So I got to know Frank very well, and. Great servant at the club, and right or left back, either way, really top player in my opinion.
Sounds great. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's something which I think I was interviewing a lot of players and a lot of fans who saw Frank play. It seems for some reason that he's always in. As you said, I think he's the second all-time appearances after Billy, but he doesn't just seem to get the recognition for that. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's all, as you said, it's Trevor, it's Billy.
But I think that's just unlucky. You're in an era with Trevor Brook and Billy Bonds. There's so many good players come through, and that's why I think later. I used to think, I wish I'd done better at West Ham. But then when you look back and you see the players that you actually were playing with and training with, and they were your friends, and it was just fine. Frank Lampard was a top class player. No. I've got give you a list of other ones that were in the main. Paul Brush wasn't a bad. Paul was a good player. Brushy left back, very good player.
Yeah,
but Frank for me definitely.
I agree. Right. Okay. So we put Ray on the right, Frank on the left. Right. Centre half. So who's your first centre half?
Well, that does in what order I put them. But if I talk about Alvin Martin first, I've got Alvin as my centre half. Alvin's a very competitive person, very competitive player, as everyone knows. Again, went on for a huge amount of appearances at the club, but he could play. He was in the olden days. Centre halves used to win the ball and get it up the field, didn't they? In the olden days, but I think Alvin was one of the first ones that was he could play football. He wanted to, he could everything. He could win it in the air. He could very aggressive, and he what you need in the middle of defence. But when he could also play from the back as well, he was a very good football player. Very competitive. Speaks for itself what he's done with his England caps, and again the amount of games, the longevity of his time at the club, and how many games he's played. Amazing.
And he was part of your digs, wasn't he, as well? And he came down.
Yeah,
and
this might look as if I'm picking on my mates, but not my mates. I haven't spoken to Alvin for. I got a testimonial game in Scotland, and Alvin sent me an England shirt of his to auction at the dinner. Probably the last time I spoke to Alvin. I haven't spoken to Alvin for a long time. But a great player, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And a good lad. He was good to me as a young boy again, and helped me in my early days for sure.
Fantastic. Okay, so put Alvin, and who's he going to partner then? I think we've already sort of alluded to who.
Billy Bonds is an absolute icon, isn't he? I mean, you could play Bonds in middle midfield if you wanted to, but Billy can play anywhere as well. Quality player, play absolutely anywhere. But to me, Billy Bonds and Alvin Martin in the middle of the back. That's a decent back four, by the way. Ray Stewart, Billy Bonds, Alvin Martin, Frank Lampard. I would put that one against anyone in any time, any era. I think and the amount of games that they've played between them for West Ham United,
thousands.
Must come to be over 2,000. Well over 2,000. Amazing.
Yeah, it must be. Billy's 799. Frank's about 600. So that's 1,400 already. Alvin must have done 500 at least.
Yeah, more.
At least. So yeah,
2,500, I think.
Yeah, Parksy must have done at least 300, 400. I reckon. Parksy.
Yeah, at least.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Billy Bonds was just. I don't know. When Billy had there was a book come out with Billy, and I was asked to make a few comments and my memories of Billy Bonds. And Billy was just an icon, and he always had time. He always said hello. None of these guys were big-headed, and they always from day one they had time. They had humility and a great player, unbelievable fitness. But I think a lot of people talk about Billy Bonds and they talk about his aggression and his fitness, because his fitness was unbelievable. He's the fittest man I've ever come across. But he could play, That's the thing. I think at West Ham you have to be able to play, because we've never been a team of sort of just kickers. No, we've always Alvin Martin can play. West Ham needed players that could play. As a defender, you got to be able to tackle and win the ball in the air, and you got to be hard, and you got to be physical and committed. But you've got to be able to play. And Billy Bonds, he had everything for sure. Absolutely everything.
Definitely. And as you said, got a stand named after him now, so it's it's all
not bad.
I
just looked at the stands to pick this team. I made sure I had Trevor and Billy in the stands. Bobby Moore, I didn't get a chance to play with. I met Bobby a couple of times, but I didn't get a chance to. I was after him. But I've got two players.
Two out of three.
11 that's got stands named after them, which
bit of a spoiler for the midfield now. It doesn't matter.
I've gave him away, but Andy doesn't pick Trevor Brook and of Robson.
Let's talk about Trevor, because then it makes sense. So yeah, Trevor, an amazing man, fantastic footballer.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at Billy Bonds, Trevor Brook, and totally different as styles of play. Trevor was just majestic. The way his vision, and for a big man, the way he could turn so quickly. He always seemed to have time on the ball. His passing was quality. Wide areas, he could turn in a sixpence and get crosses in from 1 minute. He's got his back to goal and defender up his backside. He's got his turn and got a great crossing in one. He was a fantastic football player, a really, really top class player.
And I was thinking about that, sort of because people talk about obviously Billy and Trevor, and in terms of fans, there's you either in terms of the players that West Ham fans associate themselves with and sort of really get on board with, they're either your Billy Bonds types players or they're your Trevor Brooking type players, either silky, really skillful, or they're heart on the sleeve. I mean, heart on the sleeve, like, and so having both of them in your team,
totally different. But
yeah,
a football team needs a mixture and a balance of different type of players, and they were both so important to the team and the club. When it was the fact that the 2 stands named after him now, and everyone knows about so much of it. But both fantastic football players and totally different types of football players, but both invaluable to the club and brilliant people. Trevor, actually, I got a testimonial game in Scotland for Dunfermline against Heart of Midlothian. Not because I was a great player. My career finished at 28 years old with a knee injury. I got a testimonial game. I got a dinner and a game, and Trevor actually. So did Ray Stewart, to be fair. But Raymond Stewart and Trevor came up from London and played in the game for Dunfermline against Hearts for me in a shitty, cold December Sunday. Horrible weather, but he came up. So and I did meet Trevor. I went to see him when he was, because I did some stuff as a technical director of coaching for Queensland, and when I visit back to London, I contacted Trevor, and he was the head of the FA at the time with his coaching development role. So I asked if it was okay to come and say a quick hello and what have you. I didn't want to take too much of his time up.
Sure,
I thought 10 minutes, quick hello. And he invited me to come to Soho Square in the FA headquarters. Must have spent 2 hours with him, 2.5 hours at least, a couple of cups of coffee, sitting chatting about football. He was as interested in Queensland as I was. And
of course,
he's just a gentleman, absolute gentleman. Brilliant.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right, so Trev's in the midfield. Right, who's going to go? I don't know, left wing. Who's going to go on the left wing then?
Picks itself, this one again, Alan Devonshire. Fantastic. Came later, yes, Dev. Came late into the game. He didn't come through the academy. He got him from non-league at the age of 21, if I remember correctly. But from day one, he was straight in the first team, and he was superb. The way he could run at players, and a great lad as well. A super player. Yeah. I lived in Barking at Roger's parents, as I've said a few times, and Phil, Paul Goddard, and Alan Devonshire used to get the train across London from the Reading sort of area. I think they were at that side of the city.
Yeah.
So I used to pick them up at Barking every morning for a couple of years and drop them off, and I got to know them very well. But what a player! Again, as I said, it's easy to say it as everyone, but if you look at these players and you put them to today's games, there would be superstars in today's game, no doubt about it.
Better the pitches as well.
The pitches is better, everything. So yeah, Dev was outstanding, absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, no, he was.
Natural fitness, and pace. Very entertaining. I think everyone knows how good a player Alan Devonshire was. But yeah, so Trevor and Alan picked themselves, in my opinion.
Okay, so we've got Trevor, we've got Alan. We've got Devonshire. Right, we've got Brooking, we've got Devonshire. Who's next in the midfield?
Well, I've got you asked me to pick a 4-4-2, so I've picked 4 across the middle.
Nice.
Patsy Holland, Paul Allen, Trevor Brooking, Alan Devonshire.
Right,
and I made a comment to you that also the people I was thinking about was Francois van der Elst, European Football Player of the Year. I mean,
yeah,
Francois maybe slightly past his best by the time he came to us, but he was, European, that speaks for itself. I think European Football Player of the Year, and he was a great football player. Jeff Pike was a great player. Alan Dickens, Alan was a smashing player when we got transferred to Chelsea. Ray Houghton didn't come through in the first team, but Ray went on to a fabulous career when he left West Ham. Ray was a tremendous young player. And Jimmy Neighbour, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but Jimmy was a quality right winger, right midfield, whatever way. But I've gone for Pat Holland there. Patsy's service to the club, I think he was there about 17 years. East London boy, same era as Lampard, Bonds, Brooking. But I think underrated Pat Holland. I think he was a very top class player. A very, very good player. But to get in this team, you must be a good player, because this is a good team. And I've gone for Patsy on the right, and I've picked them before, Francois van der Elst, a European Football Player of the Year. So I think that's the biggest compliment I can pay to Pat Holland. Pat went on to a good coaching career as well, didn't he? He was coach at QPR. He was reserve coach at Tottenham for a number of years. I went to visit him and watched the coaching there. So Pat, and it was Arsenal as well. He'd been working Arsenal, with West Ham, but he's had some really good coaching jobs, and top coach, top lad, and a very good player.
Lovely guy. All right, so we got Brooking, we've got Devonshire, we got Pat Holland, and we said Paul Allen as well. Tell us about Paul
in there, and I know Paul played on the right in midfield. We taught him a fair bit, I think, and but I've put Paul in there. mean, Paul was a tremendous competitor, really nice lad, youngest player playing in the FA Cup final
Yep.
at the age of 16 or whatever it was, or 17, I don't know if it was 16 or 17, I can't remember correctly, but Paul was a tremendous competitor, and I think he'd have to be included. I think he would fit nicely in there with his aggression, and he's a clever lad. He would play wherever the coach. He could play any role the coach gave him. He can attack. He can tackle. He's a ferocious little tackler, and that, isn't he? Very, very competitive player as well. So I would have Paul Allen in there. But if you see the players that I haven't picked, Van der Els, Jeff Pike, Alan Dickens, Ray Hout, and Jimmy Neighbour.
It's another team.
Good football players.
Great football players, yeah, and lovely lads as well. Most of them,
great lads, everyone.
Right, okay, so we've got this midfield right up front. Who's your first striker? Who's first?
It doesn't get any easier. Easy picking this. Picking Billy Bonds and Trevor Brook and Alvin was pretty easy. Dev maybe a bit of there was a lot of competition. I've gone for my first strike hand was David Cross. And as if I talk about the players that haven't made the front two, you said the 4-4-2. Stuart Pearson, Pancho, Man United, England, great football player. Paul Goddard did a great job for the club, came for QPR, very, very good football player. And then just as I came to the club, and they left quite soon after me getting there, it was Alan Taylor and Billy Jennings. And Sandy Clark came down from Scotland. Sandy maybe it didn't work out so well for Sandy, but he was carrying I think he had a couple of injury problems at the time, but he was Scotland's Player of the Year. We back to Rangers, and I ended up playing with Sandy at Hearts as well, and probably a very good player as well, and a bit underrated. And there's two other players, strikers. I didn't play much with Keith Robson, but he was very, very good. And one of my favourites, which I haven't picked him in my front two, because I didn't actually play in the first team with him, but he was at the club in my first year there, and it was Brian Robson, Pop Robson.
Wow.
He was a fantastic football player. What a first touch he had. I nearly picked him, but I've got a good player instead of Pop as well. But Pop was a fabulous football player, definitely.
And it's funny because when I interviewed Crossy and actually your other striker as well, they both talk about the influence of Pop on their career.
He was tremendous, a really nice guy. I was 2 weeks at a club, a young lad from north of Scotland. As I said, I was like a fish out of water, and then one of these big name football players. And we'd done our 2 weeks running through Epping Forest, and Pop, and he made the effort to say hello and sort of made me feel welcome. And he asked me if I played golf. And at the end, I'd only been at the club 2 weeks, and then the Friday afternoon after my first 2 weeks at the club, I'm playing golf at Chigwell late on a Friday afternoon at Chigwell Golf Club.
Yeah,
with Pop Robson, Trevor Brook, and one of Trevor's business partners. I was like, I was in dream world. I didn't know what was happening to me. It was just like so surreal. It was unreal. Watching these guys on the TV 1 minute, 1 year, and a few months later, you're actually playing golf at Chigwell with them.
It's still there as well. Of course, it's still there. Oh, Chigwell.
Fantastic. My striker off pair with Crossy is Tony Cowie. I mean, Tony's, I think he was twice sold for 2 million, I think, wasn't he? And,
something like that,
yeah, up to Everton. I mean, Tony, a fantastic finisher, good football player. So, I wouldn't like, as a defender, I wouldn't like to be playing against David Cross and Tony Cowie.
Oh, God, no.
I wouldn't fancy that at all. No.
It's like the bet. You got obviously you got Crossy's sort of physicality, and then you got Cotty's just nippiness, and just the two of them would complement each other.
I think they would be deadly. But as I said, the players are Stuart Pearson, Paul Goddard, Alan Taylor, Billy Jennings, Sandy, Pop Robson, Keith Robbins, a lot of good players as well. So but I think it's a fair 11. I'm actually very pleased with that start.
That's 11. Not a bad 11.
I think I would hold its own in anywhere in the world.
And Mandy makes an interesting question. Before I make it the last one, what players of that 11 would walk into the current West Ham team? Oh, hard, Mandy. That's hard.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a different era, and obviously, West Ham's got a lot of good. Well, West Ham's always the good players. In every era you look at, different eras and different names you'll come up with. That's a hard question. I would struggle to
I would
answer
struggle
it.
because I was thinking about the way West Ham line up at the moment. We was talking about someone like Trevor Brooking, and where he would end up, because obviously he wasn't gifted with pace, and to be honest, our team now in terms of the forward players are very quick.
Yeah.
So would he play? But I don't think he's not a defensive minded player. So I don't know where he would.
Well, I think players like Brookin, I think David Moyes, as I say, has done a fantastic job, and he's a top class coach. But I think when you've got players like Trevor Brookin, you would find a way would find the formation because players like Brookin don't come along every day, and they would get into any team in my opinion.
Yeah.
People say you say 4-4-2, but me as a coach, I've always I like 4-4-2 as well. But before you pick any formation, you would pick a formation that suits the strengths of the players that you have. Yeah. So you don't just say that's my formation. It depends the type of players you've got, and I would get Trevor in the team, and I would find the
working around him
formation around about Trevor. That's for sure.
Yeah, right. Last question.
A lot of good players today, but it's a great question actually. But it's very hard to. But I think any of those players would hold their own in today's football, and they would be superstars today as well in those days.
And the reverse, really. Is there any players like in the current team now that you would have liked to have played with back in the day?
Yeah, all of them. All of them.
I mean, Mikel Antonio. Could you imagine
getting their wages?
Yeah.
But, if you could choose when you were born and come to this football era today, for all, and it must be fantastic. It's a superstar life, and the salaries. That's the way the game is. But I think those players that in our era and that 11 and Andy's lads that I've said is they would hold their own in any era. To be fair,
I agree. And the last question, because I think it's going to be a funny one from Canning Town Len. Do you remember telling off Paul Allen on behalf of Crossy?
Yes, I do. That's one of Crossy's after dinner. Yeah, it was. Just give me a second. I do know exactly what he's talking about, and I'd like him to come back to me and tell me. I believe it was when Paul first started training in the first team. Crossy's nickname was Norm.
Yeah.
Norman Cross. And Paul had shouted and asking for a ball. And Norm. Anyway, Crossy was always winding people up. He still is to this day. One of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. He's got a great sense of humour. And he could keep such a straight face. And anyway, what I remember about one was that Crossy came to me and told me he was joking, but he asked me to have a word with Paul and tell him that Crossy's not too happy because he's only a 16, 17-year-old boy. I think he was only 16 at the time when he first started playing the first team.
Yeah. But
he shouldn't be calling him by his nickname. He said it was disrespectful to a senior player. And Crossy was only at the wind-up. Crossy was. I'm pretty sure that's the. And then Crossy pulled me aside and said, because I was one of the sort of senior young players at the club at the time, would I have a word? It was a wind-up, but would I have a word in Paul's ear about not to call him Norm? And when Crossy spoke to, I played along with the joke as you do and what have you. But when Crossy spoke to him, I think Paul said, "Well, Dave, what do you want me? What am I supposed to call you?" And he says, "Mr. Cross." You don't call your teammates Mr. Crossy said. Anyway, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if this part of the story is true or no. But I seen Crossy a few years ago up in Manchester. Neil or myself caught up with Crossy, and we were talking about these things and what have you. Crossy, the funnier part of that story is the punchline is he'd pulled him at training and told him not to call him Norm. It's Mr. Cross. And I don't know if this is true or not. I've no idea. I wasn't there. But Crossy reckons he was playing at Highbury. Dave Deliri's marking him. And a long ball has been played forward to Crossy. And Paul's made a supporting run to get the ball off of Crossy. And as he's going up to head the ball, he just hears this. And Paul had quite a squeaky little voice. And he says, he says, Mr. He instead of shouting Crossy, give me the ball. He said, Mr. Cross. I don't think that could be true, but that's the way Crossy tells the story, and it's very funny. And you imagine playing, and he says when the ball was cleared back up the field, when the ball went up the other end, David O'Leary turned to Crossy and says, "Crossy, did I hear things right there? Did he call you Mr. Cross in the middle of a first division game at Highbury?" So I don't know if it's true or no, but it's a nice story.
It's a great story.
George, if it is true, it's a belter.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well done, Len. Cheers, mate. It's been a pleasure, George. Thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Loads of lovely comments in the chat and stuff as well, and I really appreciate it. Have you had your dinner yet? Was it 8 o'clock over there now?
Yeah, it's nearly Monday. No, it's only Joe. It's just back at 8 here now, and it's Father's Day here today.
Happy Father's Day. Hope you had a lovely day. Hope you were spoiled.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me on the programme. Absolute pleasure, and let's hope the club can and David Moyes can keep them going this year, and they can go all the way, hopefully. I can't wait to get back over there once this COVID's over and get to another game and see them playing again.
Exactly. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to just let you go, George, and I'll sign off. But thank you, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.
There we go. And that was George Cowan. Hope you Cowie, George Cowie. I hope you enjoyed it. Loads of lovely comments and messages. We've put a bunch of these interviews up recently. So make sure you check them out. There's a playlist, ex player interviews. And you can go through. We've had a problem with the notifications the last couple of days. So if you have missed any, check that playlist and they'll be all on there. If you like this format, let me know. We hopefully will be doing this tomorrow night as well, 9 o'clock UK time. You don't have to get up 10 o'clock in the morning. You don't have to eat for bacon roll and a sandwich. I've had my bacon roll before, so that's good. And so we have actually got another one, hopefully tomorrow. I've just seen Stelz think it may replace the West Ham Weekly tomorrow because we've had to change things around. So hopefully tomorrow we've got another live Hammers 11 with an ex-player. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell icon so you may have been time we put new content on. We've got loads of My Hammers 11 rewinds coming up today. We've got, just to let you guys know who we've got coming up, we have boom. I should have had this already. Today we have got John Moncur's My Hammers 11. That's coming up today at about 12:30, so about an hour and a half's time. So make sure you check that one out. And also we've got George McCartney's My Hammers 11 for later on today, about 7 o'clock. So three ex-player interviews today, including obviously George's one today. As I said, tomorrow we should have another one as well. So make sure you check that out. We're back here 12:30 tomorrow. Florence is playing with LOL dolls. Here she comes. Anyway, we'll be back here 12:30. Look, it's 11 o'clock. She's still in her pajamas. Although so am I. Anyway, so we're back here 12:30 as well for the lunchtime live show tomorrow, and hopefully we'll speak to you guys lots of then. So take care, everyone. Stay safe. Wash those hands. Come in your irons, and can't do it around me. Come on your irons, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care, everyone. Much love. Bye-bye.